TESOL Presents. My name is Shelly Sanchez Taro, and we are here with our free Friday webinars thanks to AmericanTESOL.com. With AmericanTESOL.com, you can get certifications in our online or our face-to-face courses. We also, after you get your certifications, we do have where we can place you in different ESL positions from around the world. We have international audience as ever, and of course you can always find our recordings if you go to the American TESOL YouTube, which is youtube.com/user/ATESOL, and so you'll find tons and tons of webinar recordings. And you'll also find the slides and the bookmarks today if you go to this website. Sorry about that. So we're going to go ahead and start and talk about how you can help your language learners be motivated to practice English outside your classroom. Now, many of us know that if you really want to learn a language, it has to go beyond the classroom. But that can be very hard to motivate our students to speak English or whatever language you're teaching outside of the class. And one of the reasons why is especially is if your students happen to be in a community where they have other language learners, where they have other native speakers in their own tongue. And another reason is also if they're have family members who cannot speak English, so they may not have anyone immediately around to practice with. And then, of course, if they're in the country where they are speaking, where that's the native tongue, then it can be even more difficult. I've taught in several different situations. I've taught in over 20 countries, language learners from the ages of 2 years old all the way to 90 years old. And so one way that I found to really motivate language learners to want to practice English outside of the classroom and learn and enhance their skills is by getting them to subscribe and learn from blogs. There are actually several English language teachers or English language professionals who blog, and there are other just those that love the language itself who also in all organizations that also have blogs or sites that have subscriptions through email or through RSS, and I'll go ahead and explain those in a bit. But one of the reasons why I started this was because when I was teaching in Germany and I was learning German, that's how I learned German. A lot of German is that I subscribed to different sites that I liked. And then what I did was I was able to get these constantly in my email. And when I did, it was kind of a reminder. Every time a new lesson came, then I was able to see, okay, then this is a good, if I go to this lesson, then I'm going to be able to, okay, it's time for me to practice. And that's what a great part of this is that constantly students are getting these alerts and they're able to say, okay, it's time for me to practice. And that's part of motivation outside the classroom, is just having that extra reminder, that ting that says, okay, it's time for you to practice. And also having exercises, listening, anything that you want to be able to practice. Now, Peggy asked a great question. How many different languages do I speak? Well, I do know a little of about 10 or more different languages, ranging from Italian. I mean, I can understand them and things. I'm not exactly completely fluent in any other than English and mostly Spanish too. And I'm very good at German as well, though I need a lot of practice. But I can understand a lot of different languages and order and things like that. But one of the reasons why I think it's good to also learn from blogs is because a lot of times your students, they'll also be motivated if they're able to choose what type of activities and exercises really appeal to them. Because a lot of times if we want to motivate them outside of the classroom, we might assign everyone the same exercise, and that doesn't appeal to everyone. When I was taking classes to learn German, I found actually that the classes themselves didn't teach me as much as the different sites did. And one of the reasons why was because I didn't feel like my instructor, she went over grammar and things, but she didn't teach in the way that they wanted. But with blogs, you can find a blogger who has your kind of style and that you can appeal to. So what I want to do is want to show you the step-by-step process I went through. And yes, Nabila, I do speak and understand some French. I don't really speak it. I'm terrible at, because I don't speak through my nose. I don't do the nasal accents. I don't even but I definitely can understand it. And when I'll try, but nobody ever understands me in France. So, but I'm going to show you the step-by-step process I did to get my students familiar, because that's what you'll have to do. And especially if you work with older students. Now you can do this with younger students, adolescents, and teens as well. And I'll show you sites for that. But really, I think this also benefits especially older learners. And so I'm going to show you what I did, and then you can learn from that and see the options as well. So, and of course, you can teach students this way for anything, any kind of subject you teach, science, math, history. You'll find a blogger that's or a site where they can subscribe, and they can do the same process, and they can get constant lessons and motivation and learning in their inbox. So the first thing I did was I assigned a blog post. This was one of the blog posts I assigned for students, and it was big, bigger, biggest. And you can see here that the blogger, she's Miss Shona. Now, she doesn't really update this blog anymore, so this isn't actually one of the sites I recommend anymore as far as current subscriptions. But I will show you an updated list that I found this past week and made sure they were updated. So what she does here is she writes a little small a paragraph. She's showing you, different grammar. She highlights it, vocabulary. She adds pictures. She's talking about a trip to the White House. And then she's also doing this. So she has a context. I thought that this would be interesting for my language learners. They were more like very low intermediate to high beginners. And some of them were complete beginners. So I thought that this was a good size for the blog post. This was a good amount of language, and this was a good amount of images to support this. So I think that was that's why I chose this particular one. Now for the first one, this was just an example to get them started. And then what I did, if you go to that blog post and you do the search, and Peggy has left a link to it inside the chat box, then you can actually go and find this on her blog. So my students, what they did was they went ahead and they were instructed to leave comments. And we talked about what kind of comments they could leave. They could either leave questions. And so a lot of them left questions. You'll see she has like 30 comments on there. And one of the reasons why is because my students went and asked a lot of questions. So you can see here, let's see, that's 65%. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. And you can see what kind of comments they have here. So Helga, my student Helga, she asked, did you see a lot of joggers in Central Park? How was the weather in New York? Do you think the skyscrapers in New York are bigger than in Berlin? Now, my students, you might think, wow, their English is pretty good, but they actually wrote the questions ahead of time, and then they edited them. And the reason they did that, so one thing that you might find with your students, like my students, is they're very shy about making mistakes on when they write. So they want to keep editing it and edit their comments and do that before they actually post them. So that's what they did here. Here, another one from my student. She says, would you recommend a special square to visit in New York? Would you recommend a good restaurant? Another one asked, Shona, who's the teacher, have you ever visited the White House? Do you like Obama and the First Lady? Where do you come from? What is your favorite place you have visited in the world? Which activities do you recommend to do? So they're asking her questions now ahead of time. One of the great things is if you happen to be connected to other bloggers that have a really great blog, or if you want to contact the blogger ahead of time, then you can let the blogger know, my students are leaving comments. Would you be able to respond to them? And that's what happened. Is actually Shona, you can see, went and she gave them feedback. Hi, Helga. Hello, Helga. So Shona says, thank you for your comment. There were a lot of joggers, and so she answered all their questions. Now, one of the reasons I really like having students subscribe to blogs instead of just doing exercises is because a lot of times if you send them to a site and they just do exercises, one, they don't always get the opportunity to subscribe to it. So that means that they just get the score there and that's it. They don't really get much feedback. But here is more engaging. They actually have someone, a native speaker, and someone who teaches English responding to them. And so that's another added benefit of working with language learners, bloggers of language learners, is that they're able to go and they're able to respond back and engage the students. I think that's really great. The other great part is that the students can ask questions and get answers. And so if they're asking other bloggers or these sites where they get comments and feedback, then that means that they're not constantly asking you. And see, that's one of the things that happens in my classroom a lot. So that's why I had to, I give them outside resources or places. So that way, it's hard to be able to have all these students and answer every single question and have them emailing you and messaging you constantly to try and find answers. So if you're able to give them other places to do that, then that saves you time as well. So I'm going to go back and put this lower so you can see. And then another part, so after we went through the process and the students saw how, got the experience, and I showed them, about blogs, how to leave comments, how to sign up. The other part I want to show you is, let's go back real quick. The important part is, notice here that each of these has a little avatar that's a monster. So that was the other thing that was great for the students, because I was able to show them, okay, you don't have to put a profile picture. You don't have to show your face. You can protect your identity, which is also very important if you're working with young learners or students, because you do want to protect their identities. They can have an avatar instead of having their actual picture. Now, Shona, she has her actual picture, and she's comfortable with that. So that's something that they can do if they'd like to do that. The other part of the activity was I made this video, this English tutorial video, and you can watch it. You can use it with your students. And what it basically does is it's a screen tutorial to show students how to get free English lessons in their email by subscribing. So usually in a blog, usually on the right side, is an area that says enter your email, and then the students will receive. Anytime the blog updates, then they'll receive a lesson in their email for that. I find that a lot of students still use email, and that's one of the best ways to get lessons inside their inbox. Now, the other part is they can always tie whenever they get an email or a lesson to an app. So if you do have teenagers and things, they might use a service like Yo. Yo gives them alerts when they have lessons and things like that. So they can always do things like that instead if they don't happen to, really pay attention to their email. Another way that your students can subscribe to lessons is something called RSS. Now that's very important because that means it doesn't go through their email if they're not, if they don't want, if they don't look at email, if they're much younger. Teens and adolescents sometimes don't even have emails addresses. So they can do RSS, and instead they get an app, or they sign up for WebTool that is an RSS reader or feeder, okay? So in a blog, you'll find this symbol, or on a website, if you find this symbol, that means that you'll get alerts every time that they update the site. So if they do this every day, that means your students every day will get a reminder, okay, here's a great way to practice English, and they'll get a lesson with that, or whatever they want. This Common Craft video explains how RSS works. But what you need to know is just that if you click on this, and you have an RSS feeder, that your students are able to get these lessons as well. And they don't have to have an email address. They just have to be signed up for a free RSS feed account. So the one that I use that I think is really good, that I recommend, is Feedly.com. Feedly also has an app. And you can see here, it's very easy to use. You can subscribe to anything. Your students can also categorize. They can put English lessons, they could put French lessons, they could put science, anything that they're interested in, skateboards, cars, sports, anything, any site They could subscribe to, CNN, Time. All of those have RSS feeds, even in their own language, and that's fine. They could use anything. And yeah, that's a good point. So, as Peggy mentioned, there's a lot of RSS feeders that have gone. They've disappeared. One of my favorites that I used to use was Go Reader as well. But the one that seems to have stayed is Feedly. So you might find other lessons, RSS feeds, but really Feedly is the one that is lasted a long time, and that's why I recommend this one. Plus, you can see the interface. So this is what their lessons will look like. It'll just give them a quick little snapshot. It'll give them the heading, so they'll decide what they want to do. And all they do is they click on the heading, and it'll blow up to the full lesson. There's some certain apps, like your reader apps, there's Pocket, things like that, where you can also subscribe. And if you use an app like Pocket, you can also do the lesson or read the article offline. It'll put it offline on a mobile device, and that's a free service as well. So those are some options when you have RSS. So that's why I like RSS. Now I'm going to show you some actual blogs and give you some different types of ways that they teach learners English. So that way you can introduce these to your students, and then your students are able to decide, which blogs they like the most. Or you can also introduce them to the ones that you think would really match their level, would really appeal to them. So one of the most famous ones, and has lasted for over a decade, is theenglishblog.com. Now, the English blog is really wonderful because it has RSS, and it also has subscribe by email. You can actually click on the top and it says subscribe. The great thing about the English blog is it'll have images. Sometimes it has a different type. It's not always the same format. So one day you might find that they have a news story. Another time you'll find that they have a cartoon or a pun. Another time you'll see they have trivia. Another time a video. So they really differ the type of materials and content they have to teach learners about English. And then they also have articles with useful tips like this one, 100 Ways to Improve Your English, number 6, Vocabulary. So they have a different series right now, which is 100 Ways to Improve Your English. And so this is their most recent series that you can find, and they give a lot of links to different sources as well. So that's very useful for students. Students can find different other sites and activities to be able to learn English as well. The other one that your students might like, and even teenagers and adolescents could like this as well, is easelcourses.com. Now this is from a really good friend of mine, Sue Lyon Jones, who's in the UK. And so Sue Lyon Jones, what she does is she does really short exercises. Sometimes they're with pictures, and then students actually have an exercise that they choose a word, or they'll even have multiple choice. They'll have matching. There's different types of exercises, but it's always exercises. There's also images, and then there's also videos that she'll show as well. She always has different types, and it's very short, so even beginners are able to do this. But students tend to like this because it's more like action and activities. And she has popular videos as well sometimes, music videos, or and she has a lot of different exercises matching different holidays as well that will also instruct about the holiday. So that's always really great because it's very simple for language learners. They don't need to know a lot of English to be able to do that. And they get exercises to be able to test something. And then they'll get to see their score right away. And they'll get this in their inbox. She updates pretty regularly, and she's done this for a while. If your students are on Twitter, they can always ask her questions. She's at ESOL Courses, so it's really great. Yes, and Christina, that's right. Christina mentions that she has all levels, and that's true. In this particular one, it's by levels as well. So you can work with if you have mixed abilities, if you have students that are advanced, you have some that are low intermediate or beginners, then you'll find something for them as well. Now, the one your adolescents and teens are going to really like is this one, the ESLHipHop.com. On this particular site, they can subscribe here. It's right at the top, and most of them are at the top when it's subscribed by email. But he also has an RSS feed, And then what you see is that you see like articles, and they talk about famous hip hop artists, which in news that that teenagers, college students, and adolescents love. Okay, these are what the lessons look like. They're actually quite fun. So here's a video about Jay-Z. So not only did you have the article about Jay-Z, you have this video. The video has this transcript that you can search through, and that you can look at vocabulary, things like that. So it's really, really cool. And then there's a vocabulary list of what was inside. So you practice your listening here, you practice and so the other blogs, you practice mostly your writing, not your listening all the time, but here you do really practice your listening a lot, your reading and your writing. And then there's a task at the end. In this particular one, there's a writing task where it talks about Alicia Keys and it talks about Jay-Z. So learning English is from the VOA news site is also really good. That practices the students' listening skills as well. Students have a podcast that they can listen to. It's very short, like 6 minutes or less. They have a picture, and then they also have a transcript of the news. Now, what's great about the VOA news site is it's news from around the world, so it's not just American-centric, and I think that that's really good as well. The great thing about it, too, is that these are actually real news stories, and they're very current. There's also different activities that your students can do. They also have different levels, and they also have different sections as well. If you click on the top, you'll actually have more listening exercises and things like that. So that's really good. Another great site is RealLifeGlobal.com. RealLife Global has listening exercises, videos, articles, courses, English with TV, with popular television shows. So that's always fun for different types of English language learners as well. They have real life radio, okay? And so they have a transcript and they have a listening exercise or a podcast. And all of those have RSS feeds, so those are constant in the inbox as well. Here, when students, if they do sign up by email, if they don't do RSS, but they actually do email, then they also get a free ebook as well. So 101 activities with the TV show Friends. So that's an added way. You know, if your students are shy of trying to get their email, if they have email address, and then that's a motivating factor for them. They could get this free ebook with how to learn English watching Friends. So that's kind of cool as well. Real Life Global, you can see here the little videos. They also have a free download. So your students, not only can they do this, they can actually download the listening and have it on their computer. So whenever they don't have access to the internet, they can listen to it and they don't have to worry about internet access. So that's great. They also have a transcript with lessons and vocabulary file as well. They tell you the words you'll learn, and so they give activities for the students. If you're teaching business English, then you'll like English with a Twist. English with a Twist, it has different podcasts from SoundCloud. Now, SoundCloud is available as an app as well, so it's online on the web, and it's also available for Android, and it's also available for iTunes, iOS, so that's always really great for students, multiple devices. SoundCloud, they can listen to it with the app. They have to download, and they do have to have a subscription with that too. But they also can subscribe by the email, or they can do it with RSS. They can just subscribe to the listening here as well when they on SoundCloud. SoundCloud will let them just automatically, find that channel, and it'll automatically update them with that channel and notifications on their mobile device. Here they also have reading, so it's listening and reading skills as well. If your students are focusing on grammar, and I was doing this webinar earlier this week, Tiziano was there, and one of the I had a teacher to come in, and she says that this site she uses with her students all the time, and that they really love learning grammar from this site. So this comes highly recommended from other teachers as well. This one actually focuses on grammar itself. Now, teaching students from Germany and also from different Asian countries, I noticed that they're really focused on grammar rules, or very high advanced language learners. They want to know why, the reasoning behind certain types of, ways that English works. And so for my students, I prefer to show them a site or have them refer to a site, because I tend not to focus on the actual rule. But what I do is usually just have them learn English within context. So if they want to learn the rules, like what is a linking verb, what is an intransitive verb, how you use a statement and whether it acts as, in the present tense or the present progressive. If they have any questions like that, then the Grammar Revolution site is really good for that. You see that there's big highlighted images that show, the grammar rule. They also highlight, so it's very simple to go through. It's very easy to understand. It's not a whole bunch of text. And then there's video as well. One of my favorite places to learn about grammar, and I think grammar is one of the great things to practice outside of class, for your students, is Grammarly.com. Now, Grammarly isn't necessarily like for English language learners only. It's English language in general. The great thing about Grammarly is they have fun little memes, like little pictures that are really popular with students in culture, digital culture today. They have things to where how to, about correcting your status updates, about correcting your Instagram posts, Facebook, all of these social networks or Snapchats, the grammar in them. So it focuses on what students love as well, passable errors and things like that, but on things that they actually use, where they actually write English. Chances are a lot of your students will be speaking or using English more online than they will face to face. So it's great that Grammarly is able to help them with that. They also have really interactive things that students can do that they wouldn't find on other sites. So for example, here they're taking a quiz: which zodiac element matches your writing. So they have quizzes that they come up with, that are fun quizzes. They're like personality quizzes and things like that. They're not like quizzes to assess, your grammar necessarily or anything like that. They have a lot of puns and have a lot of funny puns. So Grammarly is really wonderful. I subscribe to their Facebook page, and also on their Twitter, because that's where I'm always at. And so they're everywhere, and your students can also subscribe to them on their various social networks. BBCs. So a lot of the things I've shown you are different types of English, but this one is particularly British English, and this is LingoHanok. LingoHanok talks about the news. They also have different headlines that are in the news. They have a transcript and a listening as well. They have where you can download the PDF and you can download audio, so that way it's available when students don't have internet access. There's news and levels, and news and levels have different levels. So you can work with beginners, intermediate, or a high level. You can see that it's very little text. It has videos, and it's about news stories as well. Another site is Breaking News English. This one is really great because Sean Banfield reads different current events, and what he does is he does them in different types of English. So your students can choose, um, they can choose British English or American English, and then they can play all of these different types of interactive exercises with it. Online, they can play grammar gap fills, they can do sentence diagramming matches, they can do crossword puzzles. They have tons and tons of activities that follow these listening. So they practice listening, writing, reading, and also their grammar skills as well. So I really love Sean Dunsfield's site. It also has a section for teachers where you as a teacher can download and make this into a lesson. You can download the PDF, which has several lessons, and Sean has several of these updated every week. He has thousands of different lessons in all his sites. Now, this is more of a simple site. This is rollsoffthetongue.tumblr.com. Students love Tumblr. A lot of times that they have a Tumblr, and so it's easy for them to subscribe and get notifications when Tumblr sites are updated. So this one on Rolls Off the Tongue is very simple. You can see that it doesn't have a lot of text. It basically has cartoons, puns, and that's what it has. It focuses on English within like a cartoon or an image. And it doesn't have any exercise or anything, but it's just a fun little thing that comes off, image that comes up and helps students with their English. Now, this is the only site that isn't updated regularly, but it's still one of the best sites for learning English in general, which is Nick Peachy's Daily English Activities. Now, Nick now does post, but he often just does post about his books that have come out. But if students go back, they can find really engaging activities with different web tools. So, for example, here, Nick Peachy talks about improve your English through film clips, and he recommends this site, and he walks students through the process of doing that. He does things like how to create a podcast. He has where they create a video selfie or a video cast, a podcast. He has where they'll create a word cloud. So he walks them through using web tools to be able to practice all sorts, even speaking activities. So that's why I really love this one the best of Nick Peachy, because he just has so many things. And as a teacher, if you're a teacher who's also practicing your English, this is a great way for you to kill two birds with one stone, because you're able to learn about different web tools that are great to use in the classroom, and you're able to practice and improve your English as well. One tip is to get students to connect. I've told you that all of these sites you're able to connect with a mobile device and get lessons, and a lot of students use their phones. A lot of times they can also have these to where in a feeder and stuff it'll give an offline, or where they don't need the internet, and that's great because they can take their lessons with them to go. And anytime they have a question or anything, they can post a comment and ask that particular blogger or website and then receive feedback. And then, of course, there's different hashtags students can learn with and find even more bloggers and more sites. I recommend learn English hashtag to English and study English. You'll find so many bloggers, sites, and then also students will be able to, on Twitter, you can actually subscribe to these. If you click on it and you belong to Twitter, and then they can be updated regularly what's on this hashtag. But there's a lot of resources and quizzes and activities and images and polls and things that are shared with these hashtags. And then finally, if you're an English language teacher, how do I learn about so much? Well, I actually was one of the founders of ELT Chat. I'm no longer one of the moderators, but a really good friend of mine who was my teacher trainer in Greece for my CELTA was Marissa Constantinidis. And Marissa still is the moderator and organizer of ELT Chat. So ELT Chat meets on Wednesdays, and it's international group of teachers. They have transcripts, and they can share with you on these transcripts. You'll find plenty more activities, but you also find a bunch of teachers who blog, and a lot of them share lessons and stuff as well. So thank you so much for joining me today. You can, of course, find all of these resources and stuff if you go to my post, teacherbootcamp.com, and you go /blogs ESL